Welcome to this episode of Mercy Can't Stop Her. I'm your host, Judith Cambia Obatusa, JKO. 2026 International Women's Day is on March 8th, in 3 days' time. This day has been set aside to celebrate women across the globe. As part of this celebration, I want to turn our attention to women who surmount the odds. When you say against all odds, these are women who somehow manage to do well in life in spite of difficult relationships, difficult marriages, difficult family circumstances, and all kinds of societal pressure. I'm talking about women who are trying to raise children, build something meaningful, and use their God given potential while also being mistreated, disrespected, blamed, shamed, sabotaged, neglected, or even abused by the very person who should have supported them. And many of these women are not dealing with just one issue. Some are dealing with trouble in their homes and at the same time dealing with racism, classism, sexism, ageism, all the isms, immigration stress, church pressure, family pressure, community judgment. Success in those conditions are not normal or easy. It's not. It's very hard. It is draining. It is expensive. And we're not talking about the monetary costs alone. It costs women years. Sometimes it costs them their health, costs them opportunities, it costs them peace, it costs them confidence, their self-esteem. So this episode is not to glorify suffering. It's not easy. It's not to say, see, she suffered and became great, so you too should stay there and endure things that are not good. No, that's not the point. The point of this episode is to look at the stories of these women and identify what helped them survive, what helped them protect their children and still move forward to their purpose. And so I've been reflecting on this for a while. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you would have heard me talk about women who surmount the odds in very difficult situations. And I noticed that there are a couple of things that often appear in the stories of women who rise in hard places, or rather, rise from hard places or through hard situations. There are three things I want to talk about on today's episode. Number one is community support. The second thing is building capacity. And number three is living. In fact, I'm going to turn this over a little. So community support is my number one. And number two is living. And the third thing is building capacity. So now let's get into it. Community. When we're talking about community, we're talking about support that fills the gaps that of your inadequacies as a woman in those situations. One thing that I've noticed is that many women who manage to do well in difficult situations usually have some form of working community around them. They do not survive by individual strength alone, by their own wisdom alone. And when we talk about working community, we're not talking about people they gist with, people they just hang out with. We're talking about a functional, practical community. Like I said before, a community that can actually help fill the gaps in her life. When I think about this, I think about my grandmother or my aunties in Africa. Many of them belonged to women's groups, market associations, contribution circles, and practical support networks. They did business together, they helped each other, They pool their money together. They shared information that will elevate one another. They gave each other support. Among Yoruba people, one expression of this kind of practical community support is something called ajo. Ajo is an informal savings circle. And in some other parts of the world, this is part of a broader family of rotating savings and credit associations. In an ajo, members contribute money regularly, and each person receives the pooled amount in turn. So they agree, maybe monthly, we're going to bring this amount, and this person gets it for this month. Next month is this other person. So many times, ajo becomes more than a money system. It becomes mutual aid, emergency support. For example, if you had school fees to pay for a child, you could exchange your time of collecting the pooled funds. If you had an emergency, for example, even if school fees is like regular, like if you have a family emergency, like somebody loses their father in the midst of all these things, and they are going to contribute to the funeral, they can change the cadence. And if you're supposed to take 3 months later, someone will give you their space to take. So to take now because you have this life situation. So this system is a social reinforcement. It provides business capital in some cases and practical survival. World Bank materials describe these types of systems as group arrangements where members contribute at set intervals and take turns receiving the lump sum. So when I say community, practical community, I mean the kind of support that helps a woman buy goods in bulk, pay rent, cover school fees or school costs, whether for herself or for her children, start a business. Practical support that gives her opportunities, provides her information about opportunities. Practical support that gives her encouragement and helps her avoid complete isolation. For example, when I talk about buying goods in bulk, instead of buying beef little by little and and that costs a lot, women may pool their money together to buy a whole cow and share it. Instead of buying tomatoes or peppers in tiny amounts, they buy baskets and divide them. They reduce costs through community. Many immigrant women, when they come into the Western world, especially of African descent, have this kind of systems. And it could be called any other name from Ajo because Ajo is a Yoruba term for this system. Sometimes it could be called a contribution group. It become a women's fellowship, a WhatsApp circle, a rotating savings club. That is like an English way to describe what an Ajo is. But one thing that it does become is a sisterhood where women quietly help one another survive and many times even thrive. This kind of system may look small to outsiders, but it can make a big difference in the life of a woman whose husband, whose significant other is unreliable, is stingy, is controlling, is abusive, or absent in all the ways that matter, in all the practical ways that matter. Some women survive, like I said, or thrive in spite of difficult relationships because community helps them in practical ways where their significant other has failed them. That does not mean that their relationship with their significant other is healthy. It does not excuse mistreatment, but it shows us something important. Community can reduce the damage. Community can stop a woman from drowning alone. Sometimes, before freedom comes, support comes first. And for some women, community These types of communities are the bridge between survival and the next chapter of their life. And that's why isolating women is a very, very successful tool that abusers use in destabilizing their lives. As we talk about International Women's Day, I wonder if you could take a moment to think about this. What is your role in providing practical support in community to your sister who is near you? And it doesn't mean that it's only for women who are in difficult relationships. So my second point that I noticed is when women thrive through or from hard places is living. Some women come out better because they leave early. They leave early enough to preserve their potentials and protect their future. And when I say early and you've been in your relationship for 10 years, 15 years, 20, it doesn't mean that it's too late. The thing about there's a Yoruba proverb that says that it's when your eyes open that your day dawns. So when your eye opens, your day dawns. And early could be any amount of time. Not everyone can leave quickly. Like find out 1 year later, less than 1 year they leave. No, but for some women, the turning point in their lives was not that things improved inside the toxic environment, but the turning point came when they left. We are all different. So it's just something to consider. One of the most well-known examples of this kind of thing, living, changing your life, is Tina Turner, the late Tina Turner. Britannica notes that she divorced Ike Turner in 1978 after years of physical abuse and infidelity allegations. I read the allegations. The movie told us that there were no allegations, they were real. And she went on to build a hugely successful solo music career. So living doesn't end you. But she made it out. She made it through. And she succeeded. Another example is Joyce Banda of Malawi. Britannica notes that Joyce's personal experience in an abusive first marriage shaped her later work in grassroots activism, women's economic empowerment, business leadership, and eventually politics. She went on to found organizations and she later became the president of Malawi. She actually let me not say, yeah. She went to my alma mater, Ria Rhodes University in British Columbia, Canada. Now, these stories are different. Tina Turner's story is different from Joyce Banda's. Different countries, different generations, different industries. Tina Turner was a musician, is a singer, and they had different outcomes. One became hugely successful in her career, and one became hugely successful in service to community. But there's a common thread. At some point, they were no longer willing, or rather, no longer able to keep letting destruction define the rest of their lives. They exited. And after they exited, they built. For some women, the reason they were able to build a better life is because they got out before that relationship completely buried them. And there are many women whose names are not famous at all, but their stories are just as similar. These are women who left with children, started their lives again. They left and went back to school and now have a thriving career. They left and started a business from her kitchen. Now she's an employer of labor. There are many, many women with success stories like this. And so many of them, they don't tell those stories. Because living is not always easy. It's not easy. Even the fact that you left a relationship that is toxic, known to be toxic, does not still protect you in some communities from judgment and from mistreatment. And another thing about living is that it's often not instant. People endure a lot, stay a long time before they leave. And it's not always neatly tied in a bow. It's messy. But living can be wisdom. Sometimes the breakthrough is not to keep trying, but it's to come out from there. This International Women's Day, as we look at women who have made it through, if you're in a difficult situation, what do you think? Is your breakthrough to keep trying, or is it to come out from there? The third thing I want to share is some women come out better because they prepare properly, they plan. They don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm done, and then disappear into the night with no arrangements, no money, no documents, no idea what comes next. Even in places with social safety nets, if you wanted to go to the shelter, you might not get a space. Although they do try, if you're in a very difficult situation, they try so hard, but we've got so many people, increase in numbers of people living in our country now, and in countries like Canada and other countries, people who need help, vulnerable people. So the resources are tight. But some of the women that leave those situations survive by making a quiet plan over time. And sometimes, maybe I should have said, thrive through hard situations. It's not always living. Like we said, this is the third thing that I noticed. And this planning part is the part that many people don't see, because many of these stories are not public. So let me give you an example. There was a woman in a very difficult marriage in Canada. Things were she was like pretty insecure in that relationship. It didn't look so dramatic from outside, but inside the home was unstable. There was a lot of pressure from the man, and the kind of behavior that will make the place unsafe for both family, for both the woman and her children. And remember, when I use the word safe, I'm not talking about physical violence, emotional issues. Some people are flogging their wives every day with emotionally. So now this woman, she did something really strategic. In Canada, women receive child tax benefit for their children. But this woman saved every single dime. Every child tax benefit she received for the children, she saved it. It wasn't because it was convenient, but she did it consistently. It wasn't convenient. She denied herself many things, but she managed. She stretched every dollar. She kept her mind on her future. Man, she's smart. Over time, God opened the door and she got a job, and she got a good job. And she kept building quietly, building that cash. By the time the husband's behavior had become too bad for her to cope, she did not leave empty-handed. You know what she did? She took the money she had saved and used it as a down payment for both a house and for her way out. She didn't just leave into confusion. She left into something prepared. She left with her children, and they were able to go into a more stable environment in their own house. Oh my goodness. Now let's be honest. She wasn't secure in the relationship, but she worked to secure her future by planning. Even in hard places, many women are quietly building a parallel path. They are building capacity. When we talk about building capacity, it is an example. Many of our mothers and grandmothers did this kind of building quietly. I know today people say, oh, they were foolish, but no, you can't work out every time. It's not possible for so many women. In fact, the number of women who are in difficult relationships and can't work out are more than those who have the opportunity to. Even if the government wanted to support every single one, they don't have the capacity. So we have to build capacity by ourselves. Those mothers and grandmothers I talk about that did this kind of building, capacity building, they did not always have the language of therapy. They did not always have social media to announce their troubles and maybe get support. They didn't even have polished feminist vocabulary to describe what they're going through, to articulate their experiences, but they had strategy. They knew how to stretch food, they knew how to hide emergency money, they knew how to build trade, they knew how to support one another, they knew how to carry the fruits of their body, their offsprings, their children forward. They knew how to keep moving even when life was not fair. From them, we can learn this lesson. A woman may not be able to change every oppressive structure immediately, but she can still build capacity that increases her options. And options matter because many women are trapped, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack options. That is what planning does. Planning gives you options. And I really want to share this, especially as we celebrate International Women's Day. So many strong women survive by thinking ahead, by planning ahead. They move with wisdom. They observe patterns. They're looking at this guy. They see what he's doing. They face their reality and they stop waiting for the uncooperative person to change. And they prepare for their future. So when you look at women who came out better from bad relationships, many times you will see one or more of these three things that I talked about: community, living, planning, or building capacity. Sometimes it's community first, then planning, then living. Sometimes it's planning first, then living, then rebuilding their community. Sometimes community is what gives her the strength to live. Sometimes planning is what makes living possible and even sustainable. Because as you know, I may have mentioned this, research shows that women live at least 5 times. Is it 5 or 7 times before they live completely? So, but the thing is, what we can learn from this is these women did not just survive by magic. They survived through wisdom. They survived through support. They survived by making painful decisions. They survived through strategy and through God's grace. And they survived most of all because even for God's grace, for you to receive God's grace, you have to, for you to get God's grace, you have to receive it. Most of all, they survive by refusing to completely surrender their future. And this matters as we mark International Women's Day. I want to bring this home to you, my sister, if you're listening to me right now. Maybe you're in a hard place. Maybe you're tired. You're trying to hold your life together while carrying things nobody can see. Maybe from outside, people think you're fine, but inside, you know the truth of what you are dealing with. So I want to tell you, this Women's Day is not just about celebration. It's about a reminder that if you're a woman trying to rise in a difficult situation, don't feel bad for feeling tired. You're not weak. It's hard. You are not failing. It's because life has become so complicated. You do not need to pretend that the pain that you're going through is small because people are uncomfortable with the truth. The truth is that No matter how bad it is, there is still hope for your rising. Community matters deeply. Living can help, but planning makes a whole lot of difference. You need community because no woman is meant to carry crushing pain, the crushing weight of life's pain alone. Living is helpful, but some situations do not need more endurance. They need your departure. And planning make a whole lot of difference because even before one can get to freedom, you need wisdom to build a way out of the place. So if you're listening today and you're a woman in a hard place, this International Women's Day, take a moment to celebrate yourself. Celebrate yourself because against all odds, you're still standing. You're still thinking clearly. You're still reaching for support. And you're still building one breath at a time, one step at a time. Celebrate yourself, my sister, because you deserve it. And when you do this, mercy won't stop you. Happy International Women's Day to you, my sister. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.